Welcome to the Pitch to Purchase podcast. I am your host, Lisa Rabel. I am so excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking about branding. This is the podcast that talks about marketing and sales, internal communications, the customer experience, because it all matters. And all of it leads to more revenue. So I'm talking about branding this month because as of July 1st, I'm slowly moving from Rebel Girl Marketing to Rebel Girl Revenue. Because Rebel Girl Marketing served me really well in the first 8 years I've been doing this, but it doesn't truly fit with how we actually help customers. But before we get into that story, let's talk about the difference between brand and branding. So your brand is your reputation. Your branding is what you do to form that reputation. So your logo is part of your branding, but it's not your entire brand. But I'm going to use the word brand in this podcast just for simplicity's sake. I'm going to take Apple, for example. Now with Apple, they don't sell apples. They sell technology. And when I say Apple, it's going to give you an emotional reaction, good, bad, or indifferent. But what happened is all of the advertising that Apple does, all of the stores, the way they're laid out, and the colors and the scheme and the feel, all create an experience and emotion that goes with that experience. So what I'm going to do is that we're going to play a little game here. I'm going to mention a few different brands that are like household names, and then I want you to say out loud the first emotion that comes with what that brand might be. So let's take Nike, for instance. If you're an Adidas person, you might not like that. How about Hershey's chocolate? All right, here's one. McDonald's? No, I'm from the Midwest. Culver's. What about Kleenex or Hallmark? Now, it's super interesting about those last two brands. In Kleenex, when you're you're sneezing and you ask somebody to hand you a tissue, they're not saying, could you please hand me a facial tissue? No, you say, hand me a Kleenex. So that's brilliant because it's a household name, even though Kleenex is just one brand that sells facial tissues. It's very interesting. Here's another one. When I say Hallmark, are you thinking of cards or are you thinking movies? Now, for the dudes watching or listening to this, they're probably rolling their eyes. But women, we love it. Not all women, but we love it. So you're going to have to get over it. There's an emotional science to it. That's the psychology, different conversation. But with Hallmark, you're either going to think of cards or you're going to think of the movies. It is a household name, and it creates an emotion. If we're thinking about cards, greeting cards, you may have gotten a Hallmark card at one point in time, and you probably still have it somewhere on your desk because it meant really a lot to you. I mean, when it comes to brands, people have a very strong opinion as far as their car brands are concerned. I mean, I grew up in rural Wisconsin. Believe me, there was a whole Ford, Chevy controversy going on with the trucks. So your brand elicits an emotion. My question to you is, do you understand what that emotion is? It's very important to know that. Now, one of the questions I get quite a bit is, does my brand fit what I actually do? Now, there's a couple of questions. I'm going to read them off here. There's a couple of questions I want you to ask yourself to decide whether or not your brand still fits. The first one is, does your company name describe what you do? Now, I'm not saying it has to. I mean, Apple, going back to that example, doesn't describe what they do, but it's a household name. Rebel Girl Marketing was only a quarter of what I do for clients. So it didn't fully serve what I did. And when you hear marketing, you hear I have to spend money. But changing it to Rebel Girl Revenue means, oh, I get money. So does your brand explain what you do? The next question is, has your brand evolved? Now, mine is a perfect example of that again. I started out doing mostly marketing things, but it's evolved into more of a revenue generating like business consulting firm, our company, than it is just marketing, which again is a reason for changing the brand name. If your business has evolved, maybe there needs to be a shift. Now, I'm not telling you to rebrand your company. We're going to get to that in a minute. But these are just questions I want you to ask yourself. The third question is, are you attracting the wrong prospects? If the wrong prospects keep coming to you, your brand or the communication of that brand might be off. Your branding might need to change. It might need to be clarified and better aligned to what you do. All right, here's one. I have an entire training on the power of your pitch. So when you introduce yourself and you do your pitch to people, are they confused after you get done talking? They might be confused about what you're doing because your brand might not be aligned, or your branding and your messaging might not be aligned. All right, the last one. This is really important because a lot of us build our business based on referrals. But do the people who refer you to your next customer understand exactly what you do, the outcomes you provide, the problems you solve? Are they able to describe what you do to potential clients? If that's not aligned, then we have some work to do. Now, before you go, oh my gosh, Lisa, you're absolutely right. I need to do a complete rebrand. Stop there. Because in a minute, I'm going to tell you all the things, all the ripple effects that come with rebranding. So do you need a new brand, or do you just need better brand clarification? Does your branding, your messaging, and the people you're targeting need alignment? Because if you're attracting the wrong clients and customers, it might have nothing to do with your messaging or your brand. It might have to do with where you're putting your marketing. You're not going where your people are. Well, you're not going where your ideal customers are, your target audience is. Now, if you listen to a past podcast, let me just quickly explain. The difference between an ideal customer and a target audience is this. Your ideal customer are the people who buy from you, and your target audience is where they hang out. Is it social media? Is it driving down the highway? Is it sponsoring a little league team? Whatever the case might be. So you might just need a better location to put your brand. Now, you might have the perfect explanation, but you're talking more about yourself than you are about the problems and outcomes that come for your customers. That's another problem with the alignment in your messaging. If it's all about you, nobody cares. They only care about themselves. So what I really want you to do is look at your marketing and your branding and your sales process and go, am I talking about me, or am I talking about them? Here's a rebel mindset that I say all the time. The journey is theirs. The story might be yours, but the journey is theirs. And you have to write all of your content and your communications in a matter that they're going to absorb. Okay, I'm getting really into marketing right now, but your branding is your messaging, and it's your logo, and it's where you go, and it's what you say. It's all of those things. Now, you might not need an entirely new brand. What you might need is just better clarification. Now, I'm going to talk to you about my WTF moment for this particular topic. Now, a very dear friend of mine is a life coach, and I had been working with her on some marketing stuff, and she'd been working with me on, life stuff, different things. And what was really funny is that she and I went to this networking event together. And even though we networked together, we never really stood next to each other and networked. And this is an important distinction, because we're standing with like 4 or 5 women in this one group, and somebody asked her what she did. And this was her answer. I take people through an inside out journey. And then she stopped talking. And the people are like, what are you talking about? So I'm like, no. I said, what she does is she helps you to get out of your own way so you can accomplish your dreams and your goals. That's what she does. But she was talking in such a subject matter experty tone. I just laughed at her, and I'm like, what are you talking about? So I took her through the entire pitch process, and we created some much, much better pitches. Like one of my favorites that she says is, I unconstipate the brain so you can be you. It's just funny. I love it. But the point of that is that she was talking about how she did it. Again, nobody cares. What they really want to know is, what are the outcomes? Because I'm telling you right now, every one of us is in our own way when it comes to branding. And I'm going to tell you when I got in my own way in just a few minutes. But the whole point of this story is when you talk about what you say as your introduction or your pitch, it might make sense to you, but if it doesn't make sense to the audience, your branding is completely misaligned. It's not about you, it's about them. Yes, it's your story, but it's their journey. I'm going to say it once, I'm going to say it 100 times. Yes, it's your story, but it's their journey. So when it came to deciding to do a different name for my brand, now this is a story I've blogged about. This is a story I've talked about in my podcast before, but it's really important that we talk about this because quite honestly, maybe my story will help you with what you're thinking about. In September of 2025, I was at the Small Business Owners Community Conference here in the Milwaukee area. And what happened is that in the Small Business Owners Community, or SBOC, in the SBOC, we do what's called Idea Slams. And Pat Miller is brilliant, the founder of the SBOC. He's brilliant at these. And the Idea Slam is simply this concept. You get up in front of, whether it's a Zoom call or, a small group of people, you talk about like you have a question and everybody that's there gets to help answer the question that you have. So we were doing this at the luncheon, which means there were 160 some other entrepreneurs there. I probably know 50% of them. And I finally bit the bullet and I got up on stage and I said, I don't think I know what I do. I don't know how I help customers. And here's the thing. There's a man, his name is Carl Gould, and he was our keynote speaker that year. Brilliant. I mean, I love what he talks about. And so Pat Miller and Carl Gould were on the stage with me, or I should say I was on stage with them, technically. And I asked the question, I don't know how to tell people about what I do because I knew it was more than marketing, but I couldn't figure out how to say it. And so I tell him what I do, and Carl Gould says, well, you're in sales. I literally stood up in front of 160 people and went, no, I'm not. I'm in marketing. Now, I wasn't wrong, and Carl wasn't wrong, but they were only very small pieces of the puzzle of what I got to 10 months ago when this started to right now. I've been thinking about this for 10 months. It's like getting a tattoo. You don't just go get one and then go, maybe that wasn't a good idea. You have to think about it. You have to consider it. You have to think of what's going on because there's a long, long ripple effect when it comes to rebranding yourself. So in this Carl Gould moment, what was interesting was Pat said, Rebel Girl Revenue 10 months ago. And I was like, no, I don't know. Because why? I'm stubborn. That's who I am. I'm a stubborn person. And so what happened was over those 10 months, as I'm going through, and I'm actually like, it's going to sound really weird, but I was actually listening to what I was doing with customers and I was breaking it down into a process. And so I took the consulting that I've been doing this entire time as a marketing strategist and realizing it's not about marketing. It's not about sales. It's about revenue because I do marketing consulting. I do sales consulting. I do client experience timeline consulting, and I do internal communication and leadership consulting. I'm not a leadership development person, but I'm just, as far as the communication is concerned with leadership, I help with that as well. And all of those things, if they're working really, really well, you're going to get more revenue and you're going to have more profitable customers. It's just going to happen. So at this point, what I want you to do is I want you to think, do I need to rebrand or do I just need better alignment and better communications and better strategies to do the brand that I have right now? Because here's the reality of rebranding. There is a massive ripple effect. Massive. It's not just a new logo. And all I really did is I changed marketing to revenue on my logo. So it was a pretty easy fix. And my graphic designer Amy is brilliant. And so it's about your website. There's a financial cost to it because all of your marketing has to change. Your website has to change. Your proposals have to change. Your business card, your handouts, all your giveaways have to change. Printed materials, SEO changes, all of it changes. Your bank account has to change. And legally, you have to change it with, your state and the government. There's so much that needs to change. And if you've been on a podcast in the past and you use, like I was using Rebel Girl Marketing, now I'm using Rebel Girl Revenue. Luckily, the name is extremely similar. So my brilliant web designer and graphic designer, Amy, is helping me fix all of that. It's going to take some time to do. It's going to trickle out slowly, but it is happening. I mean, I had to change my speaker bio. And do you know how many websites I have my bio on? Different speaker bureaus and podcast bureaus and things like that. It's taking a lot of time, but it's worth it. So I want you to seriously consider, do I have the time and the money and the energy to rebrand, or do I just need to get super crystal clear about what I do and who I do it for? And there's a quote that talks about this. His name is David Baby, and I'm pretty sure I'm saying his last name wrong, but here's the quote. It's branding is just like a first date. If all you do is talk about yourself, there won't be a second one. Again, the story is yours, but the journey is theirs. So it's a super fast recap. Your brand is when people hear your brand, how do they feel about you? What's your reputation? How are they talking about you in the marketplace? Branding is the process of creating that reputation. But we interchange brand with like logos and things like that, which is fine. But the most important part about your brand is how you make people feel, because that's when they trust you and that's when they buy. So in the story about my rebranding, Rebel Girl Marketing helped people communicate better. And it was a great launch to do what I do. And my business has evolved over time. But Rebel Girl Revenue helps you in so many different ways. They help you not only get more revenue in the door, but more profitable revenue. And it speaks much more clearly to what I actually do for my clients. Because here's the reality check in all of this. Here's the bottom line reality check. I have been helping my customers for the past 8 years do exactly what I'm doing for myself. Finally. I always was saying at the beginning of the year, it's time that I take my own damn advice, because that's what I really needed. I needed someone to help me, and I hired somebody to help me figure all of this stuff out because I can't do it myself. Marketing yourself is one of the hardest things you can do as a business owner. So we're not done talking about brand and branding, because in the next episode, I'm interviewing Sue Kitchener, who is a brand specialist. And we're going to be talking about the do's and the don'ts, how to find out if your brand is off, and what to do about it. So until next time, it's time to raise the bar, my people, and maybe just a little hell. Cheers.